Good morning or afternoon, depending where you are in Australia, and welcome to a Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council research webinar focusing on collaborative intelligence and aged care. My name is Dr. George Margellis, and I am the chair of the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council. We'll just give people a few minutes to log in, so as we get ready for the event. Got a great presentation ahead of us. Okay. I'll start off with some introductions as we get ready. So welcome to the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council research webinar, focusing on collaborative intelligence and aged care in conjunction with the CSIRO Data 61. Today's online seminar is part of the monthly research webinars hosted by the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council to promote the latest research being undertaken in the aged and community care sector. To introduce myself again, Dr. George Margellis, the chair of the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council, and I will be your master of ceremony for this event. Before I begin, on behalf of the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valuable contribution to Australia and global society. The Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council, from now on I'll refer to it as just the Council, has been active since 2007 when it was formed by the then two peak bodies, AXA and ACCA, who later became LASA, and have recently merged to become ACCA, Aged and Community Care Providers Association. At the time, a number of us identified the need for the aged care sector to embrace technology as a key enabler to prepare for the massive demographic, social and economic changes ahead as the baby boomer generation reached maturity. The group was formed to assist the provider community to provide high quality care whilst ensuring their sustainability. This involved bringing providers, consumers, suppliers, payers and regulators together to design a system which supports innovation. Next. In terms of housekeeping, there are a few things I would like to quickly go over. All your microphones have been muted. If you have any questions during the event, please post them in the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom of your screen. This session is being recorded and will be made available in the next few days. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, please also use the Q&A panel to discuss these with the team in the background. Okay, so at this stage, I'd like to welcome our guest speaker for today, who is Dr. Claire Mason, who works at the CSIRO's Data 61, and has been publishing in the field of organizational behavior for more than 20 years. She draws on novel sources of data to understand how technology developments affect the skills needed by workers. Claire's research has been covered by mainstream media outlets and published in top-tier peer-reviewed journals. I'll now hand over to Dr. Mason to provide us an overview of the collaborative intelligence and aged care.
Thank you, George. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Great. I'm just sharing my screen now, just a sec. And I should say that I'm coming to you from Yagara country, otherwise known as Brisbane. And I too pay my respects to elders past and present. So my talk today is about collaborative intelligence. And what we mean by that is something that leverages the combination of human and artificial intelligence to achieve further improvements in performance and to augment what it is that humans can do. And that's a really important point. We're not automating tasks and taking them away from the human. We're trying to empower and enhance what it is that human beings can do. And the importance of collaborative intelligence is really well illustrated in the world of chess. Back in 1997, the world's reigning chess champion, I think it was Garry Kasparov, was defeated by IBM's supercomputer called Deep Blue. Collaborative intelligence, in this case, we saw a supercomputer performing better than the human. But it wasn't that much longer before the supercomputer was defeated by a new phenomenon, which is known as freestyle or hybrid chess teams. And that's where we have humans and computers working together as a team. And what they found was that two relatively amateur chess players and a not that great supercomputer could actually beat the best supercomputer and the best human. So what's important here is that we don't necessarily need the best AI and the most incredibly proficient human being, but we need to design a process where we can combine the strengths of the human and the strengths of the AI, and make sure that the AI is capable of actually collaborating with humans to achieve new improvements in performance. So this field begins with, I guess, artificial intelligence, and you will have been hearing a lot about it because it's expected to have a huge impact on the labour market in the next decade or so. It's even been described by some researchers as a general purpose technology like electricity, because it is supposed to have such broad applications and such potentially transformative effects on the way in which we do things. And artificial intelligence is defined by the European Union as a system that can display intelligent behavior by analysing the environment and taking actions with some degree of autonomy to achieve a specific goal. And sometimes artificial intelligence can just take the form of software. So you'd all be familiar with Siri, the voice assistant, or image analysis software. In other cases, artificial intelligence will be part of some cyber physical device. It might be part of an advanced robot, an autonomous car, a drone, or some Internet of Things applications. And we're already seeing a lot of applications of artificial intelligence in the things we do every day. These applications will continue to grow. What I'm showing you here is a timeline. I've pointed to where we're up to in this table in the year 2022. So we've already got artificial intelligence being used to plan, to optimize, to recognize patterns, retrieve information. That's as simple as Google Chrome. What they're predicting is that at least technically, it is possible that in the next 30 years, artificial intelligence will be able to replace over 50% of the capabilities required in most professions and occupations in our labour market today. Now, that's not to say it will replace the professionals. It just means that it will be complementing and supporting the professional, and the professional will be adding value and doing new kinds of roles that are enabled by that artificial intelligence. So if that's so great, why are we talking about collaborative intelligence? Oh, and what I should say is, whilst it's 30 years that it's technically possible for these things to happen, I would absolutely acknowledge that it's unlikely that we'll be seeing all this changing our workplace that fast, because there will be regulatory decisions, investment decisions, and of course, social acceptance issues that have to be overcome or responded to before these capabilities can actually play out in the real world. But why we think collaborative intelligence is worth focusing on is because to date, artificial intelligence has primarily been used to automate tasks that were formerly performed by a human being. And yet, only about 10% of organizations are reporting that they've made financial gains from implementing artificial intelligence in this way. And that's because artificial intelligence has very specific strengths and weaknesses. And what's great is that those strengths and weaknesses are really well complemented by human intelligence. And so what they and we would argue is that the most effective use of artificial intelligence going forwards is in designing artificial intelligence to work collaboratively with the human team member. So whilst artificial intelligence is very much used as a tool at the moment, in the future, you might be able to think of it as more like a team member. It might be a virtual team member, or it might even be a physical team member taking the form of a robot, and that it will be used to augment what the human worker can do. But this is a very new field of research, and we don't yet know much about how to design effective collaboration between human and artificial intelligence, which is why the CSIRO has invested in what we're calling CINTEL, for Collaborative Intelligence, Future Science Platform. So we're doing a range of projects in that Collaborative Intelligence Future Science Platform. And what I'm talking about today is some of the early research that's come out of that work. So to begin with, we've attempted to start defining where the potential lies to combine the strengths of artificial intelligence and the strengths of humans to achieve improvements in performance that we don't currently manage. So clear strengths of artificial intelligence, where it's much better than human beings, is in its ability to process data really quickly, to hold a lot of information in its working memory, and to perform very repetitive tasks with well-defined boundaries. And it's very accurate and reliable in those contexts. But what it's not so good at, and what we deal with a lot in the real world, is less repetitive tasks with poorly defined boundaries. And this is one of the strengths of humans, our ability to deal with novel situations, to deal with complexity and nuance, to abstraction, and even just common sense is something that artificial intelligence lacks. Something also that artificial intelligence is far less good at is processing input from all 5 senses at once. So part of the reason why collaborative intelligence is something new is because it is hard to design artificial intelligence that can collaborate. It requires improved communication skills, improved computer vision, enhanced situational awareness. And it's only recently that these capabilities have begun to emerge. So it is going to be possible for humans and machines to collaborate, but we still don't expect that the artificial intelligence will ever have the efficiency and capability to process input from what you see, what you hear, what you're touching as efficiently and quickly as humans can. So humans are still going to be needed for those kinds of tasks and also for long-term and short-term thinking. So this is the potential. And what we hope we can look at is how we achieve that complementarity. So improvements in performance and the quality of the human work experience as a result of that combined intelligence. That we're in a situation where the humans and the artificial intelligence are not working separately on different tasks. They are working together on the same task. And it's a task where they have a shared understanding of what they're trying to do. And the artificial intelligence is sophisticated enough to be able to perceive changes in the environment or in the objective and the task and respond to those so that together the human and the machine can combine their inputs to produce an integrated solution that is their combined effort rather than individual actors' effort. And to do that, we also expect to see a sustained interaction over time between the human and the artificial intelligence. So most of what we see in the world at the moment is where the artificial intelligence is asked to do something by the human and comes back with its answer. That is not collaborative intelligence because we don't see that feedback that we would expect in a human and human team, where one person does something and the other person reacts to that, adds value in some way, and then this first person can add value again. And that's what we want to see with collaborative intelligence, the human and the AI combining their input to achieve something better. And it's a very early field of research. We've carried out a global review of the academic literature to look at the types of artificial intelligence that are being developed and whether any of them actually meet what we mean here by collaborative intelligence. What I'm going to show you is just a few of the 16 applications that we were able to identify. And I'm hoping this will give you a better sense of what we're talking about and what is actually possible here. So one of the examples we came across is a technology called drone response. And this technology is designed for the human and the AI to together carry out rescues of people in an emergency situation. So what we see in this context is the human starts with some kind of notification about a human being missing or in need of rescue. They can then immediately deploy drones that will go out and scan the region far more quickly and far more efficiently than the human beings could do to more quickly locate where the person is. So the drone will stream images and send an alert to the human response team when they think they may have identified the person needing rescuing. It's up to the human response team, though, to confirm that what they've seen is indeed the person they're looking for, because that's not something the artificial intelligence is going to be as well placed to do. And at that point, the artificial intelligence can respond and the human can respond simultaneously. So artificial intelligence can immediately deploy other drones that might be fitted with something like a flotation device to start providing support to the human immediately. And meanwhile, the human response team is seeing the images being streamed by the drones, and it can make suggestions such as, please, can you fly to this location so I can see the person from a different angle and get a better sense of what condition or state they're in and how we need to prepare for this response. So what you see is the humans ultimately being the team that has to go in and rescue the person and take them to provide some health support, because they have that combination of the physical and the sight and the sound and the hearing, not to mention the empathy that the artificial intelligence can't provide. But because they're working with artificial intelligence, they can provide that rescue faster and potentially more safely, because a drone can go where a human cannot more easily and quickly. That's one example. Another one that we found was called ForSense, and I think this is a purely virtual form of collaborative intelligence and really isn't that difficult from technologies we're already working with. So it's called ForSense because the idea is it's a combination of foraging and sense making, and it's designed to help the human with online research tasks. The way it works is a human is given something to research, and they start collecting material from the internet that is relevant to that task. They put it into this application and start grouping it into themes that they think might be relevant. And what the artificial intelligence can do is use natural language processing to understand the meaning of the material that the human's collecting, and then look across the internet for other material that has similar meaning that might be relevant to the research task. And they can put it into this application and suggest to the human what theme or group the material might belong to. And the human's input is in providing feedback on whether that's a good piece of research and we'll keep it or not. Both the human and the AI can also begin suggesting ways of breaking down the groupings further by identifying themes. And so you're seeing in this the human and the artificial intelligence working together over time to capture more information faster than the human would have been able to do on their own. This next one is a tool that's been designed to help with labeling tissue cells, I think. And this probably makes a lot more sense to people like you who probably have a better understanding of healthcare than I do. But in this case, the task is to label images of human tissue. And apparently these data sets are enormous, and there is no way human beings can extract all the relevant information from these data sets. Nor are these classification tasks following a clear pattern that you'd be able to train artificial intelligence to do. Instead, what happens is the human diagnostician has a look at the cells and starts pointing to things that they consider relevant for their diagnosis. And then the artificial intelligence can learn from the human's classifications and identify other sections of the image that might be relevant to the diagnosis. And in this way, together, the human and the artificial intelligence can use far more information than would have previously been possible to begin diagnosing a person's cell conditions, pathological cell conditions. And then the last one I'm going to look at is possibly one of the more relevant ones for aged care. It's called SAGE, and it's a patient diagnosis and monitoring technology. In this case, we still have the human being involved in the original assessment and diagnosis of the patient, but the artificial intelligence is receiving the same data and information, and they review that to check whether there are any contraindications to the physician's initial diagnosis. If not, the artificial intelligence at this stage does nothing. If there are, it may suggest to the physician to consider looking at a particular indicator that might be relevant for the diagnosis, and that might change the physician or the diagnostician's diagnosis. And so they can provide these suggestions that potentially can ensure that the diagnostician is more accurate and using all of the data that in our limited human way we may not have managed to look at or considered equally well because of our existing cognitive biases. So that's an improvement in the original diagnosis in some cases, but then what happens is that the physician comes up with a treatment plan and the AI monitors the patient's reaction to that treatment plan and prognosis. And so what you're looking at here is one of the ways in which the artificial intelligence communicates what it's seeing from these data in a fairly human-centric way. So the flower is the patient. And in this case, the flower's gone off in a really wacky direction because there's something in the data being captured from the patient that is not in line with the original diagnosis and the treatment plan. Something's changed. And what's more, you've got these black petals on the flower, which represent different sets of data that are causing the artificial intelligence to suggest that something's gone wrong. So if you click on one of those petals, you're taken to the data that's underpinning this warning, if you like, coming from the artificial intelligence. So this becomes a really useful way for the artificial intelligence to monitor and also alert the human about where there may be something going wrong that needs refinement or response of some kind. So those are some examples of collaborative intelligence that already exists. What I'd like to talk about next is why we think this is something that will make a difference in aged care service delivery. Our initial reasons are, first of all, we know this is a context where most of the work cannot be fully automated. We are dealing with people who need emotional as well as physical support. A lot of that is also a very unroutine thing. You go into a person's home to provide support and you don't know what you're going to see each day, what state the patient's going to be in. This uncertainty, the need for communication and empathy means that you cannot fully automate the type of work that's being done. But there are many tasks where there is a benefit to be achieved from combining the capability of artificial and human intelligence because of the amount of data that's being captured all the time about patients and from different people, and because of the need to potentially address skills deficits in the workforce. So there's collaborative intelligence because it communicates with us by voice or by avatars, is much more user-friendly and therefore opens up the potential for clients and workers to work with this technology more easily. And often the types of tasks that aged care workers are doing require that shared situational awareness, the artificial intelligence being able to see and understand what's happening in the context in the same way as a human worker and machine do. I hope those examples give you an idea of why we are interested in collaborative intelligence. And what I'd like to talk about now is why we think it's especially relevant for aged care services. So first of all, this is an environment in which we're never going to be using full automation. We're dealing with people and they need human touch, human empathy, and we're also dealing with a very uncertain and unpredictable environment. We don't know on a given day what kind of mood or where a client is going to be at. And similarly, in dealing with our other human workers, that too can be quite unpredictable. It's also an environment, though, where the task performance can benefit from the strengths of artificial intelligence. For example, it's an environment where we're dealing with a lot of data, and often that data needs analyzing, and we want to be able to make predictions with it. These are all tasks that are really well suited to artificial intelligence. The other thing that's important is that collaborative intelligence has been designed to be easier for people to use. So in the past, we've needed programmers and coding languages to be able to use artificial intelligence. And with other kinds of technologies, we still needed some sort of technical know-how in order to make the device work. But with collaborative intelligence, we hope that it will be possible to just talk to the artificial intelligence, or maybe if it's virtual, use a mouse and maybe a keyboard to be able to instruct it. So that should make it easier for clients and workers who maybe don't have really strong digital literacy to be able to engage with this technology. The other thing is that we think that this is an environment where shared situational awareness is going to be important, and that's part of the capability of collaborative intelligence, so that the artificial intelligence is able to see and understand in the same way as the human worker or the human client. And finally, We're aware that this is an environment where there are challenges in terms of attracting enough workers. And one of the opportunities is to design collaborative intelligence so the less attractive aspects of the work are taken by the artificial intelligence, and we leave the more rewarding aspects of the work to the human. So, for example, artificial intelligence can often go to places that are less safe for a human being to go. It can do perhaps more dangerous or dull kinds of tasks, and thereby make the remaining work for the human more enjoyable. So we've done a little bit of talking with aged care providers to get their thoughts about how this capability might be harnessed in the aged care sector. And the kinds of things that are emerging are, for example, that collaborative intelligence can be used to address skills gaps. So, for example, that in the future, we'll see more and more that clients are choosing to stay in their own homes, but supported by smart devices. And so part of the role of the aged care providers will be to help them with installing and using and managing those devices. And that isn't necessarily something that the current workforce is going to be comfortable doing. So I can envisage collaborative intelligence, not that different from maybe an iPad, where the worker or the client can hold up the iPad and take a photograph of the situation, and the artificial intelligence component is going to be able to suggest steps to follow in installing the device, talking them through that process, or perhaps even suggesting where something might be going wrong and what to do. Another important role is in improving resource allocation, because of course resources are very constrained. So for example, being able to personalize and in a more timely manner decide when it's appropriate for a client or a patient to receive additional support, when they're going to need that or want that, and help the management of the people and the client to come together at the right time. It also potentially can help us with issues of data interoperability. The fact that data is often stored in different locations or required in different contexts, and yet it's very much the same information. And we saw with 4Sense that artificial intelligence has the capability to recognize when we're dealing with the same kind of information. So I can see collaborative intelligence being used to, say, pre-populate an existing form, but the human, either the worker or the client, confirming that that information is correct and providing the additional detail that maybe isn't captured in existing data sets. And then the artificial intelligence could support that further by analyzing what's come through so far and suggesting what other information would be relevant or useful to capture at the same time that might be analysed at a later date by another professional. Then finally, we know that care delivery in remote regions is especially challenging. For example, there's a major shortage of allied health professionals in remote regions. And one of the models that's being explored is using paraprofessionals, such as allied health assistants, who can be on site with the client and help with the delivery of the plan that's being developed by the professional. And I think with collaborative intelligence, there's potential for this type of arrangement to work even better, where the artificial intelligence understands, just as the allied health assistant does, what the professional's plan is for that client, and it can support the client and the allied health assistant in making sure that it's being delivered correctly, in suggesting when there's a change on some sort of data or measure that either warrants adjusting the plan, or maybe even bringing in the professional at the right time to support that delivery. But that's just my thinking, and I would be really keen to hear other thoughts from you, if you have any, about the types of challenges that we could be looking at and how they might be addressed with collaborative intelligence. Or of course, it's if you have any questions about what I've been talking about, I'd be really happy to hear those as well. So I'll hand back to Anne now, and thank you very much for your time and listening.
I'm just letting you know that obviously the council has been active over the last few months since ITAC, working with our research colleagues to deliver more information around the research occurring around aged community care in Australia. We have a couple of upcoming webinars to bring to your attention on the 8th of November. The team from Macquarie University will be providing us with an update on the work they're doing over there around health service research. And those of you who are aware of Macquarie University, we know they've got quite a significant program of work there in aged care with people like Joanna Westbrook and Andrew Georgiou and others, and we're looking forward to that. And later in the month, on the 29th of November, we have a forum specifically focused on the aged care solution vendors out there to work forward for a plan for 2023. So invite you to join us for the research webinar on the 8th of November. And if you are an aged care software or solution vendor, please join us on the 29th of November for our aged care vendor forum. In the meantime, we'll see if we can hear back from Claire. If you have any questions that you wanted to ask Claire, this may be a good opportunity to put them on the Q&A panel. We don't have any as yet, but please feel free to add any questions. And again, our apologies for the technical glitches. And
thanks, George. I'm just waiting for Georgie to give me my video back. It appears, George, that we're having extreme technical issues with Claire being able to rejoin us. So, George, I thought I'd take a minute, if I could, before we round up to questions, to talk about the Council's ongoing work with CSIRO and Data 61. While people might be interested in providing any feedback. And I see that Cecile Paris has joined us online as well, and she might like to make some comments or indeed take over the presentation. So welcome, Cecile. It's lovely to have you on board as well.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Okay. We can't see you, but I'm having problems also.
I haven't tried to put my video on yet. Let me just try that.
Okay. Cecile, look, it's from the point of view of the Australian Aged Care Industry Technology Council, we are extremely pleased to have a relationship, a long-term relationship with CSIRO Data 61. And that relationship is coming together very well with us developing up a joint paper on the application of collaborative intelligence in the sector. We've been meeting regularly on this point and really been interested to pursue the options and the possibilities that industry working with our premier research entity will give us. So, Cecile, did you want to make any remarks? I know Claire's really having technical problems in the background.
Yes, so actually Claire has not, I don't know what's coming up in her slides, but I might be able to continue her talk. So I'm leading the research program on collaborative intelligence that Claire has been talking about. And she's given you a lot of motivations already and why we think collaborative intelligence or Syntel will be really useful for aged care. So she has on this slide that we hope it might help address skills gap. But what we mean by that is if the AI can take some of the task over, it might provide more chance for more people to actually join the sector because they will be working with the AI to then accomplish a task, which then would mean there are more inclusivity, more diversity, and more people can come in. And that maybe will address the skills gap, resource allocation as well. We're hoping that it could assist with data interoperability and capture point of care. And I think she mentioned, I just saw the example she gave earlier of a system which actually works with medical staff to understand the journey of a patient, and that's a good example of capture. And also maybe support care delivery in remote region where you could have, again, either because you're addressing the skills gap, or also because you could have maybe a remote AI agent, or whatever we want to call it, but working with somebody else who may not be in that remote region, but can work together with them, just like we have telehealth these days, for example. So it's a bit different. So we're certainly hoping that Syntel will indeed have a number of applications in aged care that could be interesting to look at. Oh, I see that Claire is joining back in audio, so that's great.
Thanks, Cecilia. Look, for the council, it's a really important relationship that we have formed on this very important issue. For us, I guess it's a perfect storm in the sector with workforce issues, efficiency and effectiveness issues, having to do work smarter and think really creatively about how we can incorporate emerging technologies and evidence-based technologies. Claire, I'll just check in whether you are able to continue.
I am here, but I'm in an open plan environment now with power, which helps. So yeah, I was really just wanting to finish up by capturing people's ideas about where collaborative intelligence might be applied in aged care, and the slide that Georgie has is perfect for introducing that. I think what the kinds of challenges that would be relevant are ones where we do need both human and artificial intelligence strengths. We're interested in those cases where artificial intelligence is being used not to take things away from the human worker, but to empower or enhance the human's experience, and where we've got that ongoing need for both the artificial intelligence and the human. So what we've got is a table on the next slide, which suggests some of the domains where it might make a difference. And I'd be really keen, if it's possible, to hear from members of the audience about whether this kind of technology might make a difference for some of the challenges that they face, and if so, how it might be deployed.
Thanks, Claire. I see George is back also. I've got a number of questions from some of the participants, Claire, that might go to questioning that. A number of people, and I'm trying to summarize some questions I'm getting directly from the audience, are really asking about our current aged and community care workforce crisis, and how you think collaborative intelligence might work to fill the gap that we have in attracting workforce, but also in just creating a vision for the new jobs that the sector might need in the future.
Yes, well, I think that's a great question. I'm not the expert, but we have done some consultation with aged care providers to get some ideas about that. And for example, one of the opportunities with artificial intelligence being more collaborative is to address some of the skills deficits that I think exist in terms of digital literacy. So we have people who are great at supporting people, but not necessarily great at managing those smart devices and technologies in the home or in the aged care setting. And if the collaborative intelligence can help them with providing advice, for example, on the installation of those devices, or, you know, I can imagine someone with an iPad taking a photograph of what the screen is showing or how something's being plugged in, and the artificial intelligence being able to provide some support. So that, I hope, means that we can provide a way for less digital people to feel comfortable using the technologies with clients. And I think the other potential here is that this is much more explainable artificial intelligence. It can talk to you about what it's doing and why, and it can check whether you're comfortable with how it's doing it. So in that respect, I think it addresses some of the ethical issues and concerns that clients might have in terms of monitoring, having their data monitored or surveilled or shared with others, and potentially gives them greater control. And finally, if we design this well, we use the artificial intelligence to get rid of the dirty, the dangerous, and the dull in the tasks, and potentially make it a far more rewarding environment for the human worker. So I guess this is a very long answer, but the idea would be you've improved the quality of the work. And because you're combining the human and artificial intelligence, you're also improving efficiency. And so that should mean that we end up being able to pay people better and we give them a better kind of work. And that might be part of the answer.
Thanks, Claire. And you've just, I guess, touched on some of the other questions that I was trying to amalgamate in the background here, and they are around the ethics and the legalities of applying this sort of approach. Any comments about any work that's already been done in that area?
From me or from the audience? And Phil, in fact, is probably well placed to talk about that because she is the expert.
Happy
Sorry.
to direct that question to Cecile.
Look, I don't really know, if I want to be honest, because I don't know enough of the application in aged care. So I'm sorry, Claire, you've taken me by surprise there.
I guess
I
we
didn't think,
we
yeah.
take that on notice as an area that we're really interested in drilling down.
Yeah, I mean, there are frameworks.
Future work.
There are frameworks that are being developed on responsible AI and what needs to be built in to ensure that it is ethical and empowers the users and it's not making biased decisions. So that is part of the developments in artificial intelligence research.
And I think it's probably very important for us to focus on this area going forward. So we've all been to events where artificial intelligence is espoused as the answer to everyone's problem, but obviously tying it into the required humanity associated with delivery of high quality care is important. So I think that from a council's perspective, I think this is a significant ongoing research initiative for us to keep our eyes on. Just noting, there's a couple of questions that popped up. Anne, do you want to make?
Yeah, so one from Jane, I think in response to your questioning, Claire. Jane, thanks for the question. You're saying with the high turnover of staff in home care, the client faces workers who do not know their needs and preferences. And she can see Syntel being able to prompt new workers on what a client needs to ensure a better experience.
That's a great idea. And something that came out of the previous discussion was supporting data interoperability and more comprehensive, I guess, data capture, which I think really builds on what Jane's suggesting. So the idea that the artificial intelligence, if it can find relevant material on the internet, it's probably able to find similar fields in other data sets and pre-populate forms with information about the client, so that you're not just asking clients to keep filling in the same information again, or workers. The human workers still needed to validate all that with the client. So, I've got your name as, we're treating this condition, or you're taking these medications, checking it's all correct. But also the artificial intelligence can help with, why don't you consider, maybe ask about this or get information about that, because it's thinking about what the data suggests might be relevant in this context.
Thanks, Claire. I think we've probably only got time, George, for one more question. So I'm going to go to the question from Evan. Thanks, Evan, for your question and comment in the pane there. Evan's making a comment about his interest in the mechanics of AI assessing the level of quality of care. Comments that there should be a mechanism for consumers to make a judgment on the quality of care, not some predetermined value point that's determined by administrators, rather than end users themselves.
So far more tailored support. It might be, I don't want checking every day, but I do want somebody to pick up when this happens.
Yes.
That's great.
I think one of the key things there would be how machine learning would enable you to actually have real-time data from a number of consumers. So you're actually comparing, you have a real-time analysis of quality of care over time, recognizing that sometimes care will go up and down depending on extenuating circumstances, like our poor colleagues in northern Victoria at the moment. So yeah, I think that's, that's an interesting perspective. I just want to comment because Alan Nugent, I noticed, also noticed a question around the use of the natural language platforms. And from what I understand, there's no reason why collaborative intelligence couldn't also integrate in with natural language interfaces, and for both input and output. I see Cecile nodding furiously there, so it's an agreement. Sure.
I come from that area of research, George. I studied natural language, so I'm certainly very keen on that. It's not there yet, let's be honest. I mean, it's not, okay, Siri is there, but I can tell you with having an accent, it does not always understand me very well. So it's definitely not there yet, but I certainly would hope that it could be used in particular in application like aged care and probably other application where you can't actually type in or something. So I certainly would love to see that happen, yes. Hence my nodding enthusiastically.
Yeah. In the meantime, because of collaborative intelligence, we actually have humans in the loop, so we can actually rely on humans to actually do some of that communicating as well, which is something which has come back quite significantly from a lot of consumers around the desire to still have a human component to their care delivery model. Okay, so look, I think we're pretty well done for questions, and we're pretty well on time as we're going forward. So thank you, Claire, for your presentation. Thank you for persevering with the technical challenges of Queensland. I mean, yeah, I know there are some issues around Queensland around connectivity and electricity, but you'll get over those as time goes on.
I'm so sorry. It was a problem with my computer losing power in the midst of everything, and I apologize to everyone, and many thanks to Cecile and Anne and Georgie and you for filling the gap.
We understand that, and I think it's a great example of why we need collaborative intelligence. We need humans in the picture to make sure sometimes things work. So I don't know whether you did that just to highlight the issue, but it worked out well. So look, thank you very much. It's been a very informative session. As chair, I do commit. I find this area particularly fascinating from a technology perspective, and having spent the last 5 years being told by every engineer that I know that artificial intelligence will make me redundant. Actually, 25 years have been telling me that artificial intelligence will make me redundant as a doctor, and I still seem to be here. So I think there's definitely much scope for collaborative intelligence to solve our problems, and it may even solve Elon Musk's problem about telling us that artificial intelligence may be the end of the world. But that's a whole different discussion we can have. Thanks again to Claire. Thanks to Cecile for joining us. If you want to get in contact with us at the Aged Care Industry Information Technology Council, please use the information on the screen. That's for myself, for Anne Livingston, our executive, and for Georgie Gould, as secretariat. I do remind you, we also do have a fairly active LinkedIn group that we are seeking to get much more interaction on. So please join us on our LinkedIn group to raise questions and discussions around technology in aged care. Our next research webinar will be on the 8th of November with Macquarie University, and you can register for that event via our website at www.aciitc.com.au. Finally, I'd like to again thank Dr. Mason for today's session, and thank everyone who attended today. Recording will be made available in the near future. Feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. As we've highlighted a number of times within the council, we believe that evidence-based research around the challenges of aged care is critical for us to have sustainable ongoing solutions. So whilst many of us have been in the technology space for a long time, the reality is without proper evidence delivered by people like Claire at the Data 61, the various research organizations, we're working on theories, not data. So looking forward to seeing you again at our next research webinar. In the meantime, for those of you in flood-affected Australia, keep safe. Hope it all recovers well, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.